Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hey y'all, it is that time again. It's Pasture Pig Podcast time. And for those of you wondering, where has Troy been? It seems like he is a week late. You are correct. I am a week late. And I'll get into that here in a second as to why. And it's about to drive me out of my mind. So we'll just see how it goes. But we are here and things are working. I believe if you're hearing this, then things are working technically. If you're not hearing this, then they didn't work out and I'm just talking to myself in my office. But it's been an interesting March for sure. As far as things going on here on the farm, not much has changed. It's getting a little warmer. Things are starting to green out. We're seeing some buds pop. That's got me excited about all the prospects, all the potential this year. I don't have any update on piglets yet. I've got a farm that is farrowing about this time. This should be farrowing very soon. That right now we have an agreement to get some pigs from. So when I get some more of those details nailed down, then I'll definitely share that with you guys. I don't want to keep you all in suspense. I'm kind of in suspense myself. But I'll share that with you all once I get some details worth passing along. But been doing a little touch up here on the pig pastures, a couple areas. What I'm going to do is we've got, I don't know, I don't want to assume that everybody who listens to the podcast watches the YouTube channel because that would be presumptuous of me. But I also don't want to load up a bunch of details, boring details of those of you listening that already know what I'm talking about. But with our 100 acres, we're a valley watershed. Watershed goes through the middle. Just imagine like a tube sock that's got a creek running through it with steep slopes on both sides. So I keep the breed stock that we retired here recently. I kept them on the southern side, and they spent a good year of their life cycle on that side and didn't have anything on the north side. Well, the new pigs I'm going to bring in, we're going to let them hang out. They'll probably do their life cycle on the north side, rotating through several pastures that I have there, and see how that goes. And that'll really let the south side kind of rest. And if there was any type of disease that we were running into with our farrowing issues, hopefully that dormancy, letting that ground lay fallow for over a year, is what that would be if I do it the way I hope to do it. Then really hopefully get a reset on that ground. But who knows? We'll see how that goes. Speaking of that, when we talk about the pigs, I still, as of yet, have not heard back from my processor. And as the date of recording these bumpers, it will be almost 2 months when I took my 3 pigs to the processor, the USDA processor, and still nothing. And if this was something that I was waiting to bring back for resale, I would be losing my mind because, as you know, the clock's ticking in that situation. For us, this is personal consumption, so it's like, all right, if I don't have to keep all my freezers running and you guys are going to, then we'll let it sit. And now it just becomes morbid curiosity. And I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know if I'm going to get my pigs at all, if I'm going to get somebody else's pigs, or what. I could get a duck. Who knows? That's just the frustration level I have with this processor right now. It's just beyond comprehension. And I don't see this. I just can't see this processor staying around much longer. And it is a beautiful facility. If they shut down, I hope somebody comes in and remanages. But it's tied to a bigger business. If it shuts down, then it's just going to be gone. So I'm frustrating to say the least. Well, all right. Before I just get into a whole tirade and rant, let me move on. I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, every single one of you that support us on Patreon. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate that. The $5 level means just as much to me as the $15 level, but I can't go through all of those. But I do want to just thank the 15, because those that part with that just means a lot to me, and that's our board tier. And I just want to say thanks to John and to Mark and to Tina and to Chuck and to Fritz, to Noah and Rob and Matt and Tango Papa. I love that. That's a fun one to say. I hope he stays with us for a while because I get to say that all the time. Let's see what else is going on the farm. We have so I was going to say why am I a week late? Well, I'm a week late and feel bad for Neil Saxton. So Neil was one of our guests. I recorded his podcast episode a couple weeks ago, and I go through a lot of lengths to make sure that we've got good sound. I've invested in what I think is what I thought was good equipment. And it proves to be good equipment 99% of the time. And so I've got multiple screens up here. I'm watching inputs and seeing, it's like, okay, levels look good, even while we're talking. So while you hear me interviewing people, I'm keeping an eye on my levels to make sure that things aren't getting blown out or something's dropped off. And we recorded a really solid episode with Neil. Neil has like 40 years of experience in raising pigs. And so it was a great interview. I come back, it was last weekend because I was going to try to go live on the 10th. So I come back, it's like, okay, it's time to edit it down, do my bumpers. I like to do my bumpers close to when I'm going live so the updates I'm giving here on the farm are relevant. And I get 6 minutes into the interview and nothing. So it's a 2-channel system. Both channels, my audio and Neil's audio, were gone, but the file was still 58 minutes long. So it's just like it disappeared. And I use GarageBand, and when I'm looking at my visuals, there's all my input levels. It's showing it, but it just right at like the 6 minute and 52 second mark, it just goes dead. But all the input, the visuals were all still there. So I'm like, I can't believe this. So it's not, there's not even a way to visually watch that as I go along. So what I did with this interview you're going to hear today, I did institute some redundancy. So I actually have 2 recordings going on at the same time, and one just goes in an archive. So I've already done my pre-screen of this. So this interview with Jason is good. It first level worked, but I have a backup now. So it's just one more thing to have to worry about is running a backup. And you trust technology, and it always messes you over. So who knows? Can't wait till we go back to just beating rocks. Okay, so that being said, I think I've got it figured out. And for those of you who say, well, wait, what about Neil? What have you done with poor Neil? Well, Neil, God bless him, he has agreed to come back on, and we're going to try to record that within this week, and then we'll get it posted in that schedule. So I can't apologize enough to Neil. It's got to be nothing more frustrating than to spend an hour talking to a stranger, pouring your heart out about your love and your passion, then find out that nobody's going to hear it because it just went away. So hopefully by the time we get scheduled to record again, I didn't want to do it immediately after because I think that influences our interview, because it's like, okay, we already talked about this. So I'm trying to flush everything from my mind that I know about Neil, but I know it's going to come back. So we'll see how that interview goes. But I want to try to give him the best interview possible and allow him to share his expertise, because it was a really good discussion. So who knew? Along that same lines, this is an APB, people. This is like the little fuel gauge warning light on your car. Neil is the last person I have teed up. And so if you've reached out to me and I haven't responded to you, then somehow your input, your pre-screening got lost in the abyss. But I do want to get some more people scheduled. Now, there's some that have reached out that we're looking at topic specific, so bear with me because I'm still trying to get some of the other pieces of the puzzle together. But I need some guests. I need some guests on here. So if you would like to be on the podcast and you haven't, or if you have been on the podcast and it's been a while, I like to go at least a year before we do a follow-up. Reach out to me. We can discuss that. Or if there's something topic specific, reach out to me. There actually is somebody who reached out to me that we may do topic specific. They actually want to kind of do a reverse. They want to talk to me about farrowing. So I could probably discuss a lot of what not to do and the frustrations of farrowing gone wrong. But we'll see. We'll see what we can do. But definitely want to encourage people to reach out and get on the go to the Pasture Pig podcast. Go to the pasturedpig.com website, use the podcast entry form, do some pre-screen info, and we'll try to get some scheduling done there. Excuse me. All right. So this episode's sponsor is going to be selfish. It's going to, well, they're all selfish, Troy, because you're trying to make a buck. Yeah. Um, this week's sponsor is me. It's a Red Tool House. So we have our store, our online store, and right now we've got some plant products. Like I'm a big comfrey guy, and you think, oh, what does that have to do with pigs? Not much. Maybe someday there will. There's some things I'm experimenting with, but I love comfrey. If you're into permaculture, you're into any type of more regenerative gardening, this is a staple plant. Love this stuff, and it's easy to grow. It's very resilient. It grows super fast, and it's quite prolific. So I sell cuttings of those. And we're also doing some propagation with elderberry and some other things playing around with. So we have comfrey on the store. We'll have some other things hopefully in the next month or so. But I'm also playing around with, I want to do something pig related when it comes to apparel. Not something that's just branded Pastured Pig or branded Red Tool House. It is what it is. You know, I don't expect people to wear my brand out there just because of whatever. But I thought, wouldn't it be neat to come up with something that's more generic, but still is in the realm of the pastured pig. So working on some of the things there. So that's still definitely in the early design stages, but keep an eye out for that. If you want to know more, you want to see the store, go to redtoolhouse.com and there's a store link, or you can go to store.redtoolhouse.com and you'll be right there. Okay, enough of my chattering. Let's get on to our conversation. So today we are going north of the border. We're in Canada. And we're going to talk with Jason Dodds of Dodds Acres and have a good discussion about some of the subtle differences about Canada when it comes to pastured pigs. It's kind of neat to see what Jason's experiencing up there. And my goodness, you guys are going to laugh. He made me have to do some math there when we're trying to figure out price of feed per based on weight. And so that was a double whammy because he's talking about kilograms in Canadian dollars. So I was just like, okay, I can't, I was having a hard time wrapping my brain around that. So you guys will appreciate it. They'll get a chuckle out of that. So, all right, without further ado, let's get in and talk with Jason. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Troy. Today, we are going north of the border. We're going into Ontario, Canada, and we're talking with Jason Dodd with Dodds Acres. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Troy, how are you today?
I'm doing well, and for people that get a little peek behind the curtain, you know how I'm a little frustrated right now because poor Jason's been on the line for the last half hour. I've tried to figure out technical difficulties, so he's been gracious and patient, so I appreciate you doing that, and I think we've got the bugs worked out, but we'll see how it goes.
Mm.
All right, so tell me, so first of all, I have to ask, because whereabouts, you don't have to give me the exact location in case people are trying to stalk you or in some sort of witness relocation program, but where are you in Canada, Ontario, exactly? Ontario, Canada.
We are, so if you're familiar with Michigan, from Port Huron, Michigan to where I live is about 2 hours north of the Michigan border.
Okay.
And listening to past podcasts, I've heard you were in Barrie, Ontario, and we're about an hour and 45 minutes from Barrie.
Okay, so you're an hour and 45 minutes. Are you southwest or are you north?
Southwest.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, that was my first foray into Canada. I really enjoyed it. Some beautiful country up there, and that was neat. Actually, I think, in fact, we were just talking details last week. Maybe going back up there to Barrie again in July.
Nice.
Just doing some tentative planning there. But yeah, really neat area. So okay, so you're that's what always fascinates me. I know I'm guilty of this. When I think of Canada, I think, okay, Great White North, obviously a lot of snow, really further north than all of us. But you're further south than a lot of New England and then the northern states of the United States. You kind of play in that little pocket of Canada that comes down around the Great Lakes. So you're not as northernly as some might think.
Nope, that's quite true.
Yeah. All right. So I assume your weather right now being middle of March, you're probably coming into a false spring like we are.
Yeah, we had our winter here this year was really kind of overwhelming. We've got more snow than we've had in probably 10 or 15 years.
Oh, no kidding.
Probably, I want to say we had 3 to 4 feet of snow on the ground a month ago, and right now I can see my grass. So it's gotten like yesterday we were probably in the mid 70s year temperature and rain, and now all the roads are flooded around us and the fields full of water. The pigs are looking for high spots, but today it everything went below zero again, froze, and it slowed the water level down a bit. So hopefully
Yeah.
everything clears up.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That makes things interesting, doesn't it?
It does. In the wintertime, we keep the pigs are outside. Some of the pigs are left outside with electric fence, and more than 5 or 6 times this year, we had to raise the height of the wire because it was under the snow. So the electric fence was drowning out before the pigs ever got to it.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be frustrating. I say I haven't really run into that. Usually it's just the weeds that hit the bottom line of the fence that I have to worry about.
That's right.
I've not dealt with that much snow on a regular basis. So. All right. Well, so let's back up. Give me an overview of Dodds Acres. What kind of the size of the farm? Kind of how you're set up. Lay your land. I assume in that area of Ontario that's decently flat land. So kind of give me that 40,000 foot elevation.
It is. So we've got 50 acres of uh, bush and workable field. Our workable field acres are about 10, and the rest is swamp and bush. We've got a 40 by 60 barn that has a cement floor in it that we farrow in. And other than farrowing in a bit of the wintertime when the snow got too deep, the pigs spend their entire life outside on pasture.
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal. What
Mhm.
what size herd are we talking about? I mean, obviously you said farrowing, so you're doing a farrowing to finish operation, I assume. And how many pigs do you currently keep, or you in your breed stock, that type of thing?
Yeah, so we've been doing this for 4 years. This is our fourth year at this property. Before that, we were on 5 acres, and we only had 2 or 3 pigs that we raised for ourselves. We'd buy weaners every year. So we're on the upswing. Right now, we have 13 sows, 2 boars, 23 piglets that are under 5 weeks, and 5 feeders. So 43 in total.
Oh wow, okay, that's pretty good upswing from previous then. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You go big or go home, I think is the thing.
yeah, yeah. So what got you into this? So you say you're 4 years in. What's the history? The history of farming. Urban guy decided to change your life. What's your history?
Uh, well, yes and no. I was born and raised on a farm, just a hobby farm. And then I moved to the big city for work for 10 or 15 years, and then had enough of the city and moved back out to the country. And it just seemed right. Started with chickens like everybody else does.
Right.
And we had the opportunity to buy a couple piglets from a guy, and we raised them for ourselves. And we did that for 3 or 4 years. And this property came up for sale during the peak of COVID, so it was the right time for us to sell our existing property, and we bought the place we're at now. It had no buildings, no house, no anything, and but because of the COVID pricing up here, we were able to get a lot more money for our old place than we paid for it, which
Mm.
put a big downstroke on the new place. And right at the time we were doing that, the guy we were buying our piglets from, he rented a barn, and the landlord of the barn told him he wanted them out because he was going to put some cattle in there. And it was one of those, the guy said he was going to get out of it. We weren't sure where we were going to get pigs. We knew we wanted to keep raising a few. And after talking to him for a while, we made a deal and I bought him. We had no infrastructure here at all. And a friend of mine has a dairy farm, and he had a spare barn that he kept some dry cows in. And he said, "There's room to put them in there." So the first winter, they weren't on my property. We had them stored in a dairy barn,
Huh.
and we were still trying to figure out what we were going to do. And we had a boar with them, and the sows, and the one thing led to another. One night, I went to do chores. Of course, we're not living there. I
Yeah.
went to do chores, and I went in and I thought, "Oh, there's a rat on the floor, a dead rat." And then I realized it was moving, and it was dark in the barn. And all the sows of this boar were in the same pen. So I grabbed the shovel to give the rat a smack, and then I looked a little closer and found out it was a piglet.
Oh
And
wow.
one of these sows that the guy sold us, he said that she wasn't exposed to this boar, but yes, she was. So it was the middle of January, and we had no nothing set up for him. So it was a late night that night, getting everything going, and we haven't looked back since.
No kidding. So was it more than just one in that litter? Was it a viable litter that you were
Yeah,
not expecting?
she had four, and like I say, it was cold. It was probably, I don't know, 20 degrees out,
Yeah.
and I picked them up and cleaned them off, and I put them in front seat of my car, turned the heater on the floorboards, and I called my wife, and she went and picked up some plywood at the hardware store and brought it out, and went to hammering together a pen to keep her separate from everybody else, and they all survived. They did really well, surprisingly, even after what they went through to get started.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's the interesting surprise. Yeah, you never
Yeah.
know. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get in that situation.
Yep. Sure.
So are you now residing on the? Because you said, if I heard you correctly, that the property you bought didn't have any infrastructure at all. It didn't even have a house. So are you guys now?
Yeah.
Do you have a dwelling there?
We built a house. We built this barn. We're actually at the back of a 50-acre farm, so we decided rather than running power lines in from the road, we put up solar panels and batteries and a propane generator to help us get through the winter months. But all
Nice.
summer and fall and spring, we're off solar.
No kidding. So you're totally off grid, tucked on the back side of the 50 acres. That's pretty slick. I like
You
that.
you got it. If people like the Amazon drivers call us from the end of the driveway, they don't believe there's anything at the back of the farm.
Right. Yeah. 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 I think of the
Yeah,
old Funny Farm movie. By the time the mailman gets out there, he's pretty liquored up and pissed off.
yeah, you got it.
Oh, that's great. Well, man, that sounds like a really nice setup. So, you said 10 acres of workable pasture. So
Yeah.
was that in disarray, or was it in pretty good shape when you guys got it? Did you have to do a lot of cleanup?
No, so when we bought it, the first year that we took possession of it, the land was rented to a local farmer, and he had corn on it.
Hmm.
And he did his thing with his corn, and we never even talked about renting it back out. It just didn't seem like the rental price on that 10 acres. I think he paid $300 for rent for the year for the corn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with it being 50 acres, we just decided that we'd be better off to use it for ourselves, doing whatever we were going to do, whether it was pigs, cows, or growing butternut squash.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, great. Great. And the other 40 acres, like you said, is bush and swamp. How much swamp are we talking? And is that something that's like totally unusable, or it's just you got to get a little creative with it?
Uh, we so what we do in the spring, like right now, the pigs are up on the workable pasture land,
Hmm.
and they'll stay up there until the swamp dries out a bit. Like right now, we're actually a low spot, so we're getting all the runoff from the neighboring farms and fields, and that swamp would be up to your waist
Wow.
in water. But in 2 months, it'll be completely dry. So in the summertime, they can have the whole swamp.
Ah.
It's probably 10 degrees cooler. There's a lot of mosquitoes, but they get in there and work up the old logs and everything and find lots to root around with. And then when we get them out of the field, I'll work it up with a tractor and a set of discs and then broadcast seeds, oats and peas. This year I'm going to try a little bit of buckwheat. I've read where they'll eat buckwheat and it helps keep the weeds down.
Hmm. Cool.
But
So yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just so if I'm understanding right, so that swamp area is not forested. It's not like it's like a southern swamp where you've got a lot of trees. It's just a collection area, seasonal. And then when you're able to get in there, you get the pigs in, like you said, being able to bring in some equipment and be able to till it up and reseed and
Well, the swamp itself is full of trees, but the 10 acres of pasture
oh, I
land,
got you, I got you.
that's what I reseed.
Oh, okay.
We've got a little bit that's pasture seeded, and then the rest of it I just work it up and broadcast seed some oats and peas on it. And once they get to about foot and a half, 2 feet tall, and they start to seed out, where you're actually seeing pea pods, I'll put the pigs in there, and they'll mow it right back down to the ground. and then we'll rotate them out of it. The majority of that stuff starts growing back. Like I only have to do it once a year. We can feed on one section maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very
Mhm.
good. And so what breed have you gone with? Have you gone with a mixed? Is there a specific area you're focusing on?
Well, we've got so the original ones that we bought from the guy that we were getting them from originally were Berkshires. And then my wife got digging around on the World Wide Web and she likes Hereford pigs.
Mm.
Here in Canada, well, here in Ontario, so Ontario, like some of you guys that wouldn't know, but so Ontario, there's only 2 or 3 breeders of Hereford pigs in the entire province.
Hmm.
But Western Canada, like 2,000 miles away, there's four or 5 or 6 other ones. So there's not a real big variety of genetics there. So we imported four baby pigs, females from Manitoba, and we brought them in, and then we bought a boar from Alberta with different genetics, and we're trying to get them bred together. And the other breeders in Ontario are showing interest in buying some of ours because they're not related directly to the ones that are here.
Hmm. Yeah.
But as far so far, that's not going so well because the boar that we got from Alberta hasn't been able to breed the sows, but the sows have been bred by Berkshire boar because he's built a little different. Hereford boar seems to be short-legged and has trouble getting the job done. We're thinking we may have to do some AI this summer.
Yeah, or get him a stool or something.
Yeah, it's painful to watch some days. It's like you're almost there, buddy. Just keep trying.
Yeah.
But he did, and it's weird because he has actually impregnated the Berkshire sows. We had some gilts in a Berkshire sow with him, and he bred them, and we get some beautiful looking piglets. It's like why can't he get the job done with the Herefords when we need him to? But
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So it sounds like
yeah,
you've got some that are cross then. You've got some Berkshire Hereford
yeah.
cross. Yeah.
That this year's well, last year I guess we had one litter, and they all sold, and so we send about 12 or 13 pigs a year to the butcher, and then we sell individual cuts or halves and whole, and then the rest of the piglets that we have, we sell as piglets,
Hmm.
and we have no trouble. Like if we had another 30 sows here, I don't think we have any trouble with the pig.
Hmm. So, yeah. So it sounds like you've got a waiting list, people expecting litters from you or checking to see if you've got anything in the litter to
Yeah,
grow out as feeders. Yeah.
and we're not advertising on Facebook or anything. Our Facebook page will put a picture of new babies, and then uh, our phones go nuts. It's like, I heard you had pigs. I heard you had piglets. I heard you had piglets. And it's like, well, yeah, but they're all spoken for so far.
Hmm. Wow. Is there a variety of customers as far as small to mid-sized farms, production farms, a lot of homesteaders, individuals just wanting to raise one or two, or are you just seeing?
It it's people that want 1 or 2 or 3. There was a person the other day wanted 22.
Hmm.
The biggest thing up here, we have a lot of industrial farms that have 20, 40, 60,000 hogs. So there's spillage once the techs go through, and they'll find pigs that aren't put weight on fast enough, or maybe they've got a crooked eye or something and they don't meet standards. They get sold off and people buy them, but they're still just your pig from an industrial barn.
Yeah.
And as far as heritage breed pigs, there aren't that many people that have uh, piglets to sell. So the people that are actually buying them, they looked into it and they figured out, hey, I don't want a pig. I want a heritage breed pig.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very good. Well, let me ask you this. So
Sure.
we talked we talked in pre-screening, and I think I think maybe you pointed this out that we haven't had many or any Canadian uh, pastured pig operators on the podcast yet. So there's some uniqueness there that may be experienced from the Canadian perspective versus U.S. perspective. So, other than the pigs, talking a little funny and using the metric system, what's the
Yeah.
difference that you're seeing or that you're hearing at least?
Uh, there are similarities that really come up when we take our pigs to the butchers. Part of our biggest problem is the capacity. The butcher shops that look after all the smaller guys and other producers, they're overwhelmed. They just don't have the kill capacity. So that's the biggest thing that holds you back.
Mm.
Um, Last year we had two or three pigs that we wanted to send in October, November, December, January, and our local butcher shop couldn't handle them. They were just swamped. So we did manage to get them into a different one, but it's always nice to go to the same place. You know the cut you're going to get, you know the kind of sausage you're getting made and how everything tastes. But that's one thing is for sure. Feed costs, they're varying and bouncing around. I don't know. So we get 1,000 kilograms of feed, which works out to 2,200 pounds of feed. And standard hog grower for us is about $450 a ton. So $450 for 2,200 pounds.
Hmm.
Dry sow works out to $374 for 20. Nurse sow, 412. So we've got that. Uh,
Jason, if you
what
don't
you
mind, let
put,
me interrupt you. You're breaking up on me there a little bit. If you don't mind, kind of revisit that again. You're talking about your prices you're getting there.
yeah, okay. The price for feed 1,000 kilograms is 2,200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
We get it. We call 1,000 kilograms as a ton up here, and we call what you guys use a ton as a short. So our feed for a hog grower mash is $450
Okay.
for 2,200 pounds. Dry sow is about 375 for 2,200 pounds, and nurse sow is about $410 for 2,200 pounds.
Is that Canadian or
And right,
U.S.?
that's Canadian, and
Yeah.
the exchange rate right now is 70 cents. One Canadian dollar equals 70 cents here.
Yeah. So that pricing seems, if making my head hurt here, can you make me do math? That pricing seems pretty good, because I look at it as a pound. When I break it down, that's how I look at it. Is I hover around 16, 17 cents U.S. per pound.
Yeah.
And the Canadian with the exchange rate, you're probably yeah, I can't remember if I'm going the right way or not. So you said 70 cents on the dollar. Yeah, so you're probably you're probably a little bit more expensive then. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of it still comes down to if comparably priced. So we sell our pigs at $4 a pound dressed if you bought a half or a whole. But the problem is you go to the butcher shop and you can buy sausages for $2.99, or you
Yeah.
can buy pork chops for $4. And people say, well, why are your prices higher? And you have to try to explain to them that it's kind of like cars. You're not buying a K car, you're buying a Cadillac, because our pork is red. The pork that you're going to buy from the butcher shop is pink, and ours is raised outside. Like it is raised with commercial GMO feed, but these guys are out on grass. They're not breathing in ammonia-filled barn stress, and they taste 100 times better. But it's getting that through to your customers, and most of the time, once they've tasted it, they're going to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a similar thing that I ran into when I got started about 12 years ago is just that educational element, the old like grocery store Walmart pork chop, and get it on sale for a couple bucks a pound, and you're selling it so much more expensive, and just have to educate them on the difference, and usually, like you say, that taste test is usually what fixes them.
One of the other things, the processing fees, just to get, depending on the cuts, but smoked and cured usually runs us between 300 and $350 an animal, and we ship them around 220 to 250.
Hmm. Okay, sorry, you broke up there, Megan. You ship them at what weight?
220 to 250.
Okay. Yeah.
So again, it's and we raise chickens too, and part of the problem. with chickens up here, we can't slaughter on farm. They have to go through a government inspected facility.
Hmm.
And to buy a chick, like a day old chick right now, for Cornish cross is 275 just for the chick. Then when you feed it all summer, feed it for the 8 weeks, the butchering costs are between $7 and $9 on those chickens. So you by the time you add in a little bit for feed and labor, you're selling your chickens for $4 a pound, and people are going, well, I can get it at the grocery store for blah blah blah. But it comes down to the same thing. But the taste is way better. The chicken's life is way better. The pig's life is way better.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm definitely feeling you on that requirement to process all farm, and that eats into profits so much in that situation. So it sounds like there's absolutely no exemptions for large or small scale farms anywhere in Ontario or in the country, I guess.
No, and to further that, with pigs are okay. Chickens have a quota on, so we can only raise 300 birds a year total.
Interesting.
And that means if I buy 300 chicks and 150 of them die on the third week, I don't get to buy another 150. That's part of my 300.
Really? So there's a quota for Cornish cross, even though you're processing all farm, you can only produce 300 total. Is that same with egg layers, or is it just for meat birds?
So the egg layers is 100 for it's 100. You can have 100 egg layers,
Wow.
and I watched enough YouTube videos. The guys down the states, like uh, just a few acre farms, and Chuck at Sheridan Park Farms, and
Hmm.
and you watch that, and it's like, well, we can't do that here, and we're limited on what we can sell. In fact, to be technical on it, you can't actually sell the eggs at a farmer's market or the chicken. It has to be on farm sales. So if they got really sticky on it, they wouldn't even let you advertise on Facebook or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or anything like that. It would actually just be a sign at the end of your driveway that said you had chickens and eggs for sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Interesting.
it's kind of like Tyson and the big guys down don't want competition, they so it's hard for us.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what's going through my head. Is that's just the big guys keeping the competition out. Really, and probably under the sake of some sort of safety, animal health, bird flu, whatever whatever argument they want to
Yeah,
make. It's that's their argument, but it really is to keep anybody from doing any production that's even remotely competitive.
it is. And but it still comes down to, if you're not going to get everybody to buy pasture raised products, and you're not going to get everybody to buy organic products, you're not going to get everybody to buy certain things. Once you get them just a little taste here and there, and it's like there's a big difference, and you can taste it if you take a pork chop of ours, pork chop of an industrial barn, and cook them together, and sit down and blindfold somebody and feed them a piece of each. They'll be able to tell the difference.
Hmm. Yeah, for
And if
sure.
you take that a pork chop from you and a pork chop from me and put them side by side, there'll be a difference because of what I feed compared to what you feed. But if you take a pork chop from barn A here in Ontario and barn C that's 400 miles away, they're going to taste exactly the same
Yeah,
because those things are fed exactly the same. They're they're so many days in this pen, so many days in this pen, and they're designed just to put that weight on as quick as they can. And you know, I've had customers say, I really like your sausage. I have one problem. And when I ask them what that is, they want to know what they're supposed to do with the stuff that they had bought before they got mine, and it's in their freezer.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, got the lousy stuff, and now I got the good
yeah.
stuff. Yep,
I
yep.
can't eat that anymore.
Right. Well, let me go back real quick to the processor. So obviously the big issue you pointed out, of course, is capacity. That a lot of the processors for processing your pork, sounds like multiple month waiting list. Got to get on there early, and maybe even before you truly know how many pigs you're going to take, you at least got to get an estimate and get on their list. So that I assume is a national or at least province inspection, and you guys, do you have like small customs? Do you have the different degrees we have, or is it kind of like everybody's all the same inspection level and same regulation level?
Pretty much the same level across the board. These, the big producers all go to two or three, uh, not sure what you would call them, sources, and there's one in Burlington, Ontario, and they'll do 20,000 pigs a day, or
Wow.
another one in Kitchener, Ontario, and then there's these smaller ones in the local towns, like my butcher shop. If I take them in there, probably they might do 40 hogs on Monday, and then they do cows on Tuesdays and sheep on Wednesdays. But there's a lot of them. They have to be inspected pre-mortem,
Yeah.
and there's two, I think, in our area that don't actually kill the pigs. They have to be sent somewhere else to kill them. Truck them in, and they do the cutting there.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So you can't sell any meat unless it's gone through one of these government inspected facilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the problem with the government inspected facilities is, of course, the first word of the government, and they you know, they can't just go into Bob's butcher shop. Bob's butcher shop has to have a washroom dedicated to that government employee. They've got to have a urinal, a toilet, and a dedicated sink just for them, and the hours are restricted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's one thing. The other thing is these butcher shops, they can't have any wild game. So during deer season up here, at one time we used to take deer in to get butchered at one of the butcher shops we use. They would shut down for the week, and they'd butcher 200 or 300 deer. And then it got so hard with the government inspectors and everything, and the technicality, they just got out of doing it because they had to shut everything down. They couldn't have any domestic animals anywhere near the place for the week that the deer were there. So they just decided it wasn't worth their effort.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that obviously creates a bottleneck situation there as well when it comes to a lot of people wanting to hunt the wild game, especially, my goodness, especially in Canada.
Yeah.
You guys have a plethora of wild game.
Yeah.
Um,
You either have to figure out how to do it yourself, or there are some guys that aren't government inspected facilities. You can take the wild.
okay. Yeah, just for that personal processing type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of similarities there. The regulations that we run into, obviously, we have down here. We have a little bit of more freedom with the custom processing, and then some of our states have state processing where it's inspected. But when you get to that higher national or federal level, yeah, the same thing. That's what I hear with our processors. They complain about, yeah, I pretty much have to pay this USDA person's salary. He's got to have this, he's got to have that. The only way I can afford him is if he's only here one day. So we only dispatch the animals on this day because that's the day we can have him here, and it just slows production down so much. It just kills capacity, and of course it raises costs because they've got to factor in that in their overhead, and then of course add that to their production fees.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody's got to pay for it, and it's going to end up being the end consumer.
Yeah, yeah. It just keeps getting passed down. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So do you see? So that waiting list you're talking about, that 3-month window there, is that? Do you think that's getting better, or that's going to be the way it is, or is it going to get worse?
I think it's probably going to stay the same. What the problem is weather, because we're up here in the Great White North, like you said. Our biggest time to sell pigs is now in the next 2 months. So those pigs are ready to be butchered October, November, December. And that's what's putting the backlog in there. January, February, March, I can call that butcher shop. As long as I call them a couple of months in advance, I get my name and there's no problem. But I know if I called them right now and said, hey, I want to bring pigs in November, I'm going to be told, sorry, we don't have any space.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's your average Joe just wants 2 or 3 pigs, and he's going to raise them on his own on his 5 acres or 3 acres like we used to, and they're going to be ready to be butchered at the same time everybody else's pigs are going to be butchered, and that's putting the bottleneck in.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, we have that seasonality here as well because nobody wants to overwinter their pigs, but yeah, I just seem to have a little bit more options. Now, the quality of those options is what I would would argue because yeah, people have heard me lament on the podcast before the processing woes we have here locally, and they just continue to be issues. But yeah, it's
And
interesting.
it, a lot of the problem, I think, up here at least, is these processors aren't able to find anybody willing to do that kind of work.
Yeah,
It's manual labor, and it's kind of gross. You could say not into that stuff. But the processor I go to, the guy that greets me at the door is in his 70s, and it's going to be a sad day when he goes because he's the guy that signs in the pigs, and I've seen everything going on in there, and I don't see a lot of guys that are in their 20s and 30s. They're all
right.
50s, 60s, and up.
Yep. Yep, I see the same thing. Our local processor, the newest one, that was supposed to be everything that you would expect or hope it would be, had a young group at first, and then just a lot of turnover. And the turnover got so out of control. It's like you have no idea who you're talking to. You call these phone numbers, and there's these kids' cell phone numbers. Oh, I don't work there anymore. I don't work there anymore. And yeah, it gets frustrating. And the ones with experience, like you say, are aging out. And it's like, okay, yeah, in a couple years, we're going to see a big issue. In 10 years, we're going to see a really big issue in the state because there's not going to be anybody that has all that experience, and the youngsters are going to run amok. But like you said, it's hard work. It's dirty work. It's obviously you got to have a certain stomach to do it day after day,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it is skilled labor. It's not something that somebody can just walk in there and say, "Okay, give me a knife. I'll tear into this." And so there's a lot of training, and then you run into the whole who's paying the most game. So these youngsters that do, I say youngsters, these adults that get in there and say, okay, I've got 20, 30 years that I can spend toward this career. I get really good at it, then I get recruited away because there is such demand for skilled labor in that area that's reliable
For sure, for sure.
and be able to pass a drug test.
Yeah, yeah. We that's one thing up here we don't require the drug test.
Only kidding.
They the rules are different on certain things. Like our last prime minister decided marijuana should be legal, so it's legal throughout the entire country. But
Hmm.
uh, it's actually against the law for a company here to require you to take a drug test pre-employment.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's I used to drive a transport truck, and I drove all through the U.S. We had to take a drug test here for that job because it was required in the U.S. But other than that, yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
you can do whatever you want.
Well, that's the thing. At Canada, you have all the snowbanks on the side of the road. So if you're high, you just bounce off the snow drifts. It's not really that big a deal, is
You got her.
it?
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, I got to say, I'm not 100% sure when it comes to USD all the way down to custom that whether it's mandatory drug tests. It may not be for us either. Because there's some industries like the food industry here in the United States. My goodness, you don't want to ever implement food drug testing for food industry because a lot of people in the food industry are users. So it's not
Yeah.
you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot all the time if you're constantly running your employee base off because of drug testing.
My theory is if you do what you want on your own time, as long as it doesn't affect your job. I don't want you coming to work stone and dropping razor blades in my ground pork, and I don't want you doing it. But you're at home and that's what tickles your fancy. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's when, like I said, when it affects your job or it becomes a safety hazard. That's when there should be some sort of issue there taken care of. But yeah, it's no
Yeah,
different than coming to work drunk versus
yeah,
staying at home drunk.
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's just better to go to work and get drunk and then go home.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you have to drink just to get through the day. So. Oh, that's terrible. All
So
right.
another one with the chickens. Before we get these chickens, we actually book our kill date before we book the chicks to pick up
No kidding.
because it's that far out.
Yeah,
But you can't just say, okay, I'm going to buy 100 chickens or 25 chickens. Uh, you actually have to make sure you've got the kill date. It's going to be for 5 or 6 extra works.
Hmm. Yeah, sorry, you're breaking up on me there a little bit again. I think your connection drops out a little bit.
Quite awesome.
Um, so so if I was hearing you correctly, so you're actually scheduling the processing of your chickens even before those chickens have landed on the farm. Obviously, because of the life cycle of a typical meat bird, it's so quick that you got to schedule in advance and get that. I guess it's really not an issue with numbers because you can say, well, I'm bringing you at least or no more than 300 birds, but that to be in
Yeah,
compliance with the law.
yeah, exactly. And it's just the way it is. So few processors that deal with smaller farms. There's big industrial processors. The quota system here, kind of weird how the chicken quota works, but the majority of the chicken quota is owned by feed mills, and those feed mills feed the chick, or you own the barn. The feed mill puts the chickens in it. The
Hmm.
feed mill puts the feed in it, and then that chicken barn gets paid on how much the chicken and how the mortality rate is and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
These big guys, they go right from chick to feed mill to slaughterhouse, and there's no room for little guys in those. These smaller ones, they have to follow the same rules and laws with the government inspectors and everything, and they just don't do the numbers.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sounds very similar to what we have here, where the farmer of these large production chicken houses really kind of becomes a slave to the industry, and if they don't meet quotas or they're coming in underweight, then their margins are super tight. They could have a chance to lose everything because they've got the farm leverage to be able to manage what they need to manage. It's unfortunate. Well, Jason, I want to be sensitive to your time here. I do want to ask you one more question. Like your 5 year goal. So where do you see Dodds Acres in 5 years? Are you looking to ramp up new infrastructure? Obviously, sounds like we're still trying to get some of the Hereford line breeding going on there. What do you think?
So the next 5 years, so right now we sell primarily online, Facebook ads, and things like that, and turning customers. Want to increase that. We've looked into a couple farmers markets, still kicking around whether it's worth our time. Uh, Believe it or not, I think what we want to do is increase the herd size and sell more piglets in the spring, as well as our regular meat throughout the year. Right now, we're only breeding the sows once a year. We're going to try this year to do it the second time around to increase the numbers as long as sales persist to fall.
Yeah.
Don't I don't see us building another barn or building anything bigger. Like the barn for farrowing is fine. The rest of the time, I say the pigs are outside. The only thing that we might do after this winter is put up some page wire fencing that's 5 or 6 feet tall, and then run an electric wire inside. Just because of the amount of snow that we got this year, that keeps coming. It's really depressing to have to go out there and lift that wire up every day, and then after a week, you've got to actually move it off the one pedestal onto the next size higher. My wife is short, and she doesn't like doing that, so it's going to end up being my job.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Sounds like a difficult job for the vertically challenged.
Yeah, yeah. This year was just it was strange, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, you go through all that hassle, and you have 10 years, you'll never see a snowflake again. So,
I hope so.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's all it takes, right?
That'd be fine.
Yeah, right. Well, cool. Well, Jason. Also, what would you say is your favorite thing about raising pigs on pasture?
It's got to be when you go out. So we feed with a side by side, and we put 5 gallon pails of feed in the back. And in the spring and summer when they're out there, they hear that side by side coming. And if the fence is 200 feet long or longer, and they're at one end and they hear you coming, they run to the end closest to you. And if you're going to the other end to feed, they run beside you and they bark like dogs. And they're so happy to see you. That's got to be the best. Or even last week we put some of the piglets, the 5 feeders that were born in January, went outside for the first time, and for them to get in the mud and the dirt and just run around and play. that makes it all worthwhile to see that. You can almost see them smile.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on the whole firing up the side by side. That's it's so Pavlovian. Our pigs always, in fact, fired up on one side. We have to drive down to the valley to get to the pigs, and there's times I'd like to get down there before they do, especially if I'm doing the daily feeding and I'm trying to stay somewhat clean. It's like, okay, can I beat them to the bowls and be able to put the food out before they come down and rub their dirty bodies all against me? And it's like, it never happens, because as soon as they hear that garage door open and that side-by-side fire up, they're like, we are on it.
Yeah,
So,
the dinner bell is being rung.
Exactly. Cool. Well, Jason, if people want to find out more about you, you said you're online. Do you have a social media presence or a web presence if somebody wanted to just check out?
You can look us up on Facebook at Dodds Acres, and you can find us at DoddsAcres.ca on the World Wide Web.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your patience with the technical issues there at the beginning, but man, it's been good talking with you.
Sounds great. I really enjoyed it.
Well, all right. Well, I appreciate Jason coming on the podcast. It was a good conversation with him. Enjoy learning what's going on up there in Canada. Some of those processing restrictions are crazy. I know we talked about chickens a little bit on the Pasture Pig podcast, but that blows my mind. It just shows you. I mean, we have that issue. We have those issues here in the country as well in the United States with regulation for our own safety, and sometimes you wonder if it's for safety or if it's just for letting the big boys do what the big boys want to do. So. Enough of that. We're not going to get political. Well, I want to, again, give a shout out. If you guys want to be on the podcast, if you know somebody who wants to be on the podcast or somebody that should be on the podcast, by all means, let me know. You can email me direct, troy@redtoolhouse.com, or you can use the pre-screening information on our website, thepasturepig.com, and that helps me just gather some information there. Topic specific, by all means, email me if you have a topic that you'd like to have us look into, and we can do so. Also, the Patreon, I've talked about it. I appreciate people supporting. Still trying to figure out exactly the best way to serve you all when it comes to supporting that, whether it's extra content, and my goodness, I'm having a hard time getting the content out I have now, so I don't know, extra content would actually be beneficial. But still looking for suggestions on that. By all means, reach out to me and say, hey, Troy, have you ever considered this? And I will take that into consideration. But one thing that you do get as a boar tier, sow and boar tier, is you get access to the episodes on Patreon without our bumpers. So without all me talking all this extra stuff, you can go straight to the interview. So if you would like to hear some good Pasture Pig discussion and less Troy running his trip, then you can go over and take advantage of that through Patreon. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody listening. And like I said, hopefully we'll get all these technical issues worked out and keep on plugging along. All right. I pray you all have a great week. Take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.